Here's what the chat is. I've had a punk IPA and a medium Macca's. I'm always down for the war, but I don't have a clue where Iraq is. It's the Premier League predictions. The Premier League is back. It's not back. It's back in like a month. We'll take it though. Real football. None of that international stuff. It's club time. It's time to get biased. It's time to get wild. Does that mean I'm predicting Chelsea to win the Premier League? Well, no. I mean, if you'd seen my video yesterday, you'd probably have worked that one out. But we're going to get into this like a medium Mac is, and maybe even a large Mac is, to be honest, and get into who's going to win the league, who's going to get those European places, who's going to go down, who's going to suck, who's going to be great, which player am I tipping to maybe even win the Golden Boot? It's probably going to be Haaland. Before we get into that, make sure to hit subscribe to stick around for more amazing content throughout the football season. The winners are going to be Arsenal. I've already spoiled it for you yesterday. If you didn't see that video, go check that out. But Arsenal are going to win the Premier League. For me, they are on the ascendancy. They are improving, while City, for me, are declining. They are losing quality. Quality is decreasing because of age, but also because of sales. And I think that Arsenal are finally going to do it. They've pushed City for the last 2 years. They're going to get over the line this time. That's your top two. Outside of that, it's all up for grabs. That will make for an interesting title race, but I think the top four race is going to be fascinating this season, because what is Arne Slot going to be like? That filthy little slot. No one's seen Feyenoord other than Feyenoord fans and Dutch football fans. Everyone outside of that,
they're lying.
I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect from Liverpool. I don't think Liverpool fans know what to expect from Liverpool. All we know is they've got a great nucleus with Van Dijk, with Salah, with Alisson. Those are players you can rely on. Trent, going forward, you can rely on defensively, not so much. But those other three players, they are core players that deliver you important things. Alisson and Van Dijk give you clean sheets. Clean sheets give you minimum draws, maybe wins. You've got a keeper and a defender that turn draws into wins. They turn losses into draws. That's how good they are. And on top of that, you have Mohamed Salah, who is guaranteed output. And with guaranteed output comes goals. And with goals comes wins and draws and points. So those three, regardless of whoever's managing, Big Sam could be managing, right? And I wouldn't rule Liverpool out of getting top four because they have those players. So they're an interesting threat. Chelsea. We have the Chelsea. Let's get a bit biased for a minute. Maybe unbiased. It's a bit tricky with Chelsea at the moment, because heading into this season, at the end of last season, I'd have said top four was in the bag. And that's not even from a place of bias. That's from a place of, statistically speaking, from November onwards, Chelsea were the fourth best performing team, ahead of Villa, ahead of Spurs, collected more points in that time frame. They had spent a large majority of the season as the fourth best team. So I was very confident, and we were only improving. These players are only improving because they're very young, a lot of them. And a lot's happened since then. Enzo Maresca is now in charge. So I don't know what he's going to be like, if we're honest. He looks all right at Leicester. We saw bits and pieces. He wants to play possession football. He looks like Pep. I'm going to pretend he's Pep. Let's hope he looks like Pep in terms of his performance. But we don't quite know what to expect in that regard. And now this Enzo Fernandez situation, which is obviously an absolute mess, has divided the camp. That needs sorting. That's not easy to do. Will it get sorted? I don't know. It's not, look, if players don't like each other, that's not the end of the world. You know, Dwight York and Teddy Sheringham, or it might be Andy Cole and Teddy Sheringham. Either way, they famously didn't really get on, but they were winning trebles at Man United. Like, it's not a necessity. It's not an inelastic good. It doesn't have to happen. However, you'd rather everyone got on, right? But as long as they do their job, I'm happy. So with Chelsea, I do think we're obviously going to be in and around that conversation because there's good enough players there. I'd like to see us strengthen more towards the first team. I know additions like Tosin and Dewsbury Hall, they will be in and around the first team, but I want to see a name that walks through that door and I think, that's for the now. Because at the moment, it's just for the Estevals. It's for the Paises. It's for the future. I want to see a now. I want to see a now signing that can improve us, propel us. And arguably, players, if they can keep them fit, if Enzo Maresca has a very different form of football in keeping players like Fofana fit, in keeping players like Reece James fit, and Nkunku fit, Lavia fit, those are four big players that will play a lot of first team minutes. So they could improve Chelsea massively. Honestly, in the case of Fofana and Reece James, who you've seen a fair bit of, particularly Reece over the years, despite injuries, they do improve the first team drastically. That's one of the best players in the world in Reece James. You just barely get to see it. So for me, it's all about keeping those guys fit. Outside of that, it would be your Newcastles, your Manchester Uniteds, your Spurses. So you've kind of got 5 contenders for 2 spots. Actually, that's discounting Villa. I'm being a bit harsh there, Villa fans. I don't know. The one thing I'm going to say about Villa is they're not in my top 4 race for next season. And I'll tell you why. I think Douglas Luiz is a big loss. I think the Onana signing is great. I just think with Champions League football as well, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I think Matson's not a bad buy from Villa. I think they could have got better left back if I'm honest, but I don't know. I think for Unai Emery's Aston Villa, playing in the Champions League is a massive thing, but it's going to be a bit of a Newcastle effect. There are going to be more injuries that come with that. There might be a bit of struggling. They're buying well, but even some of their sales, I'm not 100% sure on. I just don't think Villa will be getting top 4 next season. I do think it'll be between Chelsea, Liverpool, United, Newcastle and Spurs. Let's actually get into which of the two I think make it. I don't think it'll be Spurs, and I'll tell you why. Because I think they've been dog shit since November. It might be the second year of Ange Postecoglou ball. It's very exciting, but it's very naive football. It's very attacking football. It's fun football. It's exciting, like I said, but there's a defensive lack there, and not for the personnel, because I rate Van de Ven incredibly highly. I rate Romero highly. I like Udogie and Porro, particularly going forward more than defensively, and I like the keeper in terms of how he sweeps and everything, but I don't know. I think they can be exposed a lot, Spurs, and I just don't think they'll have enough. I think that really showed in the latter half of last season. It almost looked like an Ange Postecoglou that reminded me of an Antonio Conte at Spurs, a Mourinho at Spurs, a Pochettino at Spurs. It looks a bit burnt out on his end. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Spurs going forward. I just think Son's kind of done. Werner, Richarlison, Kulusevski. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough goals with Spurs, and I don't think you can rely on Maddison enough. As for Manchester United, everyone is saying Manchester United are back. Back where? They're the same. They're the exact... I don't know why everyone's losing their mind with this. They've signed Lenny Yoro, who no one's ever watched play. They've signed Xerxes. Is he going to start ahead of Højlund? Maybe. So are they writing off that £70 million striker from last summer in a way? They're going to sign De Ligt. Isn't that the same as any other Glazer signing? Big name, shipped around Europe quite a bit. Maguire kind of does the same job. I'm not even taking the piss. Maguire does do this a very similar job to De Ligt. I don't know if it's that necessary. They bought Lenny Yoro. Cool. He might be great in the future. No one really knows now. They just want to assume because Real Madrid were in for him but weren't willing to pay what United paid. But more important than that, I think Ten Hag is crap. I think he's awful. I think he showed last season he was awful. Run those players into the ground. There's a reason why they got so many injuries, because the football they played is too much demand physically on Manchester United and how stretched they are in midfield. And in a number of games they get caught out, and as a result, they were poo-poo last season. And I really don't think they'll be all that this season. I think he'll get the sack midway through. I don't know why they've extended it. I think maybe they've tried to go with the stability arc, but realistically, you got to call a spade, and that egg is a bad egg. He is crap. As for Newcastle, I think they're kind of going a bit under the radar, really. For the richest team in the world, they're obviously not being allowed to spend what they want to spend because they wouldn't have some of the players in their squad that they would do. But players like Isak, Gordon, Guimaraes, they are big players. And Tonali could be a big improvement there. And I think that one is going under the radar a bit. I know he hasn't played football in a year, but that's a big signing, right? That was a big signing at the time. He even started well in that Villa game, first game of the season. So I do think Newcastle will be more in the conversation than maybe people think, especially when this season they won't have that Europe. They won't have the fact that last season their injuries, not just because of Eddie House football maybe, but also because of the demands of European football, led to their demise in the Premier League. And the season before, they'd got top 4 without Europe. So I think that is a big positive for Newcastle fans to take into next season, but I don't think it'll be quite enough. So for that reason, I have Spurs 7th, United 6th, Newcastle 5th. And 4th... is it Chelsea? No, it's not. It's Liverpool. I've actually got Liverpool. I think that those players that I mentioned earlier, in your Van Dijks, your Alissons, your Salahs, will be enough for this year. Will be enough. I don't know if Salah will go to Saudi maybe the year afterwards, but I think he might stick around just for at least Arne Slot's first year to try and help tick things over. And I think they'll have enough. It's tough, though. It's tough. I like players like McAllister, obviously, as well. Kanate, etc. So I think Liverpool will be okay. Maybe Gakpo will carry his form from the Euros into the new season. Who knows? I think he'll be just enough for them. In third is the Chelsea. Am I being a bit deluded here? Maybe. I don't know. We've got good players. Like I said, I think Enzo Maresca will turn out to be a massive success. Or he better fucking do. I think maybe they finally got their right guy. He does look like Pep. He looks like him. I'm gonna say he will be him. He will basically be him. And more important than that, the way that he plays football, the way that they're training, I'm praying they will get less injuries. And if I'm honest, if you have Reece James and Palmer on your side, that's enough to come third in this league, because I don't think the quality is that high. When I'm talking about all these teams, right, that are competing for top 4, I don't think any of them are great. I don't think any of them would win a Champions League, etc. It's not like a really strong Premier League. I think the top two are drastically better than everyone else. I just think maybe we'll be the best of the rest this season, but there'll be a big points gap and not a big points gap between like third and seventh. Those teams are going to be neck and neck for me. On to the other stuff. I've said that Villa won't get Europe. I don't think that's a massive flop season. I think that Villa will have a lot of fun in the Champions League. It depends obviously who they draw, but Villa fans have been in the Championship not too long ago, you know? So I think it's going to be a fun season in that regard. Maybe even they get dumped out third in their group and they go in the Europa League, and Unai Emery, he wins the Europa League for fun, unless he plays Chelsea for Arsenal, obviously. But for Spanish teams, he won it for fun. So maybe Villa could have a good run there as well. Before we get into the relegations, I want to say my flop of the season, and I think that will be West Ham. Now, I really like Kudus. I don't know if Paqueta will be about. Maybe he'll be about. I don't know. They're making a couple signings which are interesting or look to be. However, the Lopetegui appointment, as much as he did a good job at Wolves, I think it'll be one of those where everyone thinks it's going to be all grass is green without Moyes, having, you know, won a trophy, got them European football multiple times. And I don't know if it will be. And I think the Paqueta thing obviously has a big impact because I think he's a great player. And it's sad, really, that he gambled his career away, it would seem, potentially, allegedly. But yeah, I just think West Ham could be in for a bit of a tricky season. I don't know if the Lopetegui one will work. I think it might work out a bit like the Pellegrini West Ham, where it's just not the right mesh. On to relegation. Now, it would be very boring of me to just say the three that came up will go down, because that's how it worked last season, and the gap is kind of continuing to rise between the Premier League mainstays and the Championship. I don't think that will be the case. I hope that isn't the case. But I am sending two Championship sides back down. And the first is Leicester, losing Dewsbury Hall, losing Enzo Maresca, potential points deduction. I think that's a lot to overcome. And for that reason, Foxes, you're gone. Number two, in terms of going down, I hope I'm wrong. To be honest, I kind of like all the clubs that came up. I don't really want to be right about any of these teams that I'm sending down, other than the other one after this. But I think the Tractor Boys Ipswich are going down as well, if I'm honest. They've signed Amari Hutchinson. Kieran McKenna has done an incredible job. To have back-to-back promotions with Ipswich is nuts. And to do it playing interesting football in terms of how attacking it is, loads of last-minute winners. Last season, I feel like every game you saw of Ipswich, every highlights package, or anytime you flicked over to see what their result was, they were like 3-0 down in the 90th minute and then they won 4-3 every week. Not to that extent, but you get my point. Like, it was just absolute bedlam and chaos at Portman Road. And they're going to be an interesting Premier League proposition. Obviously, haven't been here since the early 2000s, where they even got fifth. So I'm intrigued to see what Ipswich do, but I do think it might be a bit too much. Obviously, they're not going to sit there and try and dig their heels in. It's going to be them trying to play expansive football. Kieran McKenna is a very modern coach, a very ambitious coach, and I admire and respect that about Ipswich and how they've done what they've done. But I think it might be a bridge too far. And they'll take that parachute money and then hopefully they'll come back up for a proper run at the Premier League. But I think this one, it'll be a bridge too far. In terms of the third team to go down, I don't think it's Southampton. I think Russell Martin's he's going to do enough. I think Southampton will be okay. I think they're skin of their teeth. They're going to be okay. It's just a feeling, if I'm honest. Why would the playoff team be able to stay up, but Ipswich and Leicester can't do it? Just pure intuition. I'm just going with it, that I think Southampton will have enough to stay up, if I'm honest. Obviously, Russell Martin, again, a very ambitious coach in terms of how high all their possession numbers are. I'm just going off pure... Yeah, Southampton tend to do enough in general. So, fuck it. We're keeping them in. And I'm sending Fulham down. I know, a Chelsea fan sending Fulham down. Is that a bias thing? I don't think it is. I don't have like a hatred towards Fulham, not like I would towards a Spurs or an Arsenal, etc. For me, it's the fact that consecutive summers, they lost Mitrovic, and I thought that'd have a bigger impact than it did. Obviously, they did very well last season. Marco Silva's done a fantastic job at Craven Cottage. But for me, the Palhinha loss is big. Palhinha is at the crux of every good Fulham performance. That guy was mustard. He's a good signing for Bayern Munich. Make no mistake about it. And losing that spine of the team, Mitro and Palhinha and Tosin Adebayo, he is your spine. Obviously, just being a Chelsea player, I'm going to be a bit biased there. But there's no Willian. Like, Willian hasn't signed a new deal. I don't know. I know they've got a lot of money out of Palhinha and Mitrovic to the point that maybe Fulham will invest a bit more, but I'm not quite sure. I think Tony Khan's pissing around with AEW. I don't know if he's really doing much at Craven Cottage or seeing much business. I'm not seeing much yet. And for that reason, I think Fulham are going to go down. And I don't think it'll be Marco Silva's fault entirely. I actually think he'll jump ship mid-season. I think maybe a bigger job with more ambition might become available, and he could be tempted because he's done a good job there. And I think he's taken things as far as he can in terms of what he's doing at Fulham. And if Fulham aren't going to back him and show a bit more ambition, taking it to the next level, I can see why he jumped ship. So for that reason, I think the Lily Whites are in for a tricky season. I think they're going down. Maybe it's a bit left corner. I did consider Forest for this as well, but I think Forest have got too many nice players. I really do. I don't know if they'll keep Murillo. Obviously, he's a good player, but in Hudson-Odoi's reform, oh my God, mate. Awoniyi is such a good striker, and I hope he can keep fit. I know Chris Wood had a decent season, but I think Awoniyi is absolute class. I just think Forest rather have enough to get over the line to stay up. In terms of the Golden Boot, yeah, I was joking on it, but it is going to be Haaland, isn't it? It's so boring, but it is. It just is. Maybe Palmer can win it. Maybe Palmer will bag like 50 goals. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video in terms of my predictions for the Premier League, or spoilers rather. I'm going to actually do a video going through the whole table in the future, but I thought that gave a good idea of where my head's at currently. Obviously, a lot can change as the window develops, and I'll probably be revisiting a lot of my predictions quite quickly because, as we know, the window can change opinions very quickly when it comes to football. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's an interesting season, I think. I think we're in for a big season, particularly in those European battles. Honestly, I think that is going to be just fit. I think it's going to be fit. Tough to predict. So let me know what you guys think. Where do you think people are going to come? Not like that, but you know what I mean. What the fuck am I on about? Right, we'll wrap this up. Hit like, hit subscribe. All that stuff helps me out a lot. In a bit, let me know what you guys think. Who's winning the league? Who's coming top four? Who's going down? See you in a bit.